We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Friday, May 16th here in Seoul. I'm Songjin, and you're tuning into News Generation. Joining us today is Iwonbin.
Good morning.
Good morning, and Brooke Prince.
Hello, nice to see you.
Happy Friday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. Every Friday, we discuss topics that resonate with young people around the world here on NewsGen. And this weekend marks a particularly important moment in Korea's modern history. This Sunday will be the 45th anniversary of the May 18th Gwangju democratization movement, which is a pivotal moment in the country's long struggle for democracy. Now, often described as a spark that reignited Korea's democratic spirit, this movement took place in the city of Gwangju in 1980 and has since become a symbol of resistance against authoritarian rule. So in light of this day, today on NewsGen, we're going to reflect on where Korea's democracy stands and the role young people continue to play in protecting it. So to begin, for our viewers who may not be familiar with this movement, Wonpin, could you please walk us through what happened in the city of Gwangju in 1980?
Absolutely, I can. So in May 1980, there was the Gwangju democratization movement, in Korean Gwangju Minju화운동. The Gwangju democratization movement was a major pro-democracy movement that took place in Gwangju on May 18, 1980. Now, at this time, citizens stood up against the military regime, which gained power through a coup and declared martial law across the country. In response, the military sent troops to suppress the protest, and during this brutal process, many innocent civilians were killed or injured. And even after Korea achieved democracy, May 18th remains as a powerful symbol, a day to remember the people's fight for freedom. This year, 2025, marks the 45th anniversary, and Koreans continue to honor those who stood up for democracy.
Right. So just as Wonbi mentioned, the impact of the Gwangju democratization movement continues to live on here in Korea, and not only in textbooks, but also through cultural content as well, because there have been several films and dramas inspired by this chapter in history, right, Brooke?
That's correct. The Gwangju democratization movement may be familiar to some international fans of K-content because it has been the real-life event behind such films like A Taxi Driver, 26 Years, May 18th, as well as the hit drama Youth of May. It has also regained some attention globally because of Hong Kong winning the Nobel Prize in Literature. One of her books, Human Acts, actually revolves around this very important historic event. And so people have been reading this book, picking it up, and learning more about the Gwangju democratization movement. And so in honor of that book, as well as the 45th anniversary of this event, the city of Gwangju has actually decided to hold an exhibition. And so visitors can come and they can walk along this curated trail that will feature important and key locations from the Gwangju movement, as well as places from Hong Kong's childhood. So if you have any interest in Korean literature, culture, or history, then I would highly recommend checking out these walking tours. They will be kicking off tomorrow. So starting May 17th, there will be free guided tours every Saturday until October. I would highly recommend it. I think it sounds like a very powerful, moving way to honor this historical event.
I think it will be able to give visitors a great history lesson on what this movement was all about.
Definitely.
Right. So in light of, once again, the 45th anniversary of the Gwangju democratization movement, today we're going to ask us where Korea's democracy stands 45 years later. So, Wonbin, do we have any stats that could really show how much of a progress we've made over the 4 decades?
Yes, we do have some stats. So the Economist Intelligence Unit, in short EIU, releases an annual global democracy index for each country. And according to them, Korea's score dropped significantly in 2024. To get a better understanding, let's take a look at the stats. Now, the report shows 3 scores, and all scores are out of 10. Korea's overall score fell from 8.09 to 7.75. The functionality of the government went from 8.5 to 7.5. And lastly, political culture went from 6.2 to 5.6. This drop pushed Korea's global ranking down from 22nd to 32nd place, a drop of 10 spots in just 1 year. Now, this shift also changed Korea's classification from a full democracy, which is given to countries with a score of 8 and above in 2023, to a flawed democracy in 2024. Now, when we look at the details, the biggest declines were in the functionality of the government and political culture, possibly tied to recent concerns about the declaration of martial law. Now, in fact, out of 167 countries evaluated, Korea had the 9th largest score drop, putting us in similar scores as countries like the US and France.
I mean, it's definitely a bummer that we saw all this drop in the index, but as you mentioned, we had this big political turmoil that's still ongoing, which was a surprise declaration of martial law back in December. But once again, Korea is soon to hold a presidential election earlier next month. So maybe we could see the score going back up again once we end this leadership vacuum.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything else that you like to, some hopeful remarks that you'd like to share, Brooke?
I know those statistics that Wonbin shared do sound a little dire. I think Korean democracy did take a hit, but there was a silver lining, and that was that the entire world got to see how Korea handles a political crisis like this. And many people say that there is still hope for Korean democracy, and that hope lies in the MZ generation. The youth in Korea have really been very active and engaged in political discourse as of late. We saw that during the martial law protest. You're seeing them on screen right now. Doesn't it look like a party?
Right.
That's pretty much what happened, and foreign media really highlighted the fact that there was a new and upbeat, reinvigorated energy to these protests because they utilize things like K-pop. So you can see light sticks. They're using light sticks. They're chanting. They're changing the lyrics of certain hit K-pop songs to get their message across. And so it was quite different from the older generations where you might see candles and folk songs, more of a somber atmosphere. So this really gained attention, and I think a lot of countries around the world could really stand to learn from the Korean protest culture. Now, to compare to the protest culture where I'm from in the United States, protest culture is very much alive and well. It's very passionate in America. Some differences that I'd like to highlight might be, well, you won't see light sticks. You'll probably see handmade signs, merchandise, t-shirts, clothing, things like that. And American protests also typically include some sort of shock factor. There's some sort of performance art that can go into the protests in America. And I do also have to point out, you see a lot of headlines about this, even though protests in America are intended to be largely peaceful for the most part, there are some bad actors that can take advantage of the fact that there are so many people gathered in one place. And that's when you see violence incited and things like that. So protests in the US can be slightly more dangerous than, say, a protest in Korea, but they all have one commonality. The common ground is that people are trying to enact political change, and they are coming together to do that. So I think it is a beautiful thing.
And Brooke, earlier you mentioned in your answer that a lot of these protests that were held here in Korea from late last year, they grabbed a lot of headlines, and many of the international media outlets were really focusing on how young people, MZ generation that you mentioned, led the charge. So I want to also ask you, is this the same case in the States as well? Are young people actively participating in these demonstrations?
I do think you're seeing these days a lot more young people, more college students are getting more interested in politics, which I think is wonderful. It's great to be more aware of what's going on around you. And there was one research study that found, Pew Research actually found that 22% of U.S. adults have participated in a protest. That's almost a quarter of the population. So I think that really shows that young people and also marginalized communities are very, very active in protesting, and I'd like to see that number go up and continue because that's the only way to make change.
Definitely. So as Brooke just mentioned, most recently we saw large-scale protests calling for the impeachment of former President Yoon Suk-yeol following his martial law declaration last December. We also saw a lot of young people who were protesting against his impeachment. We also asked our viewers through a poll on our Arirang News channel about which parts of Korean protests grabbed the attention most. So the options we gave were K-pop light sticks, peaceful atmosphere, and young people's turnout. If we look at the results, 68% of the respondents chose peaceful atmosphere, followed by young people's high turnout, and then finally K-pop light sticks. Okay, so to hear more perspectives on democracy, especially from outside Korea, after the break, we'll be joined by a young person from Switzerland living in Korea.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
So to help us dive deeper into today's topic, today we're joined by Swiss millennial Matthew Ambrose. Welcome back to the show, Matthew.
Good to be back, guys.
Great to have you back. So Matthew, we first like to ask you, how do you view the current state of democracy in South Korea based on what you've seen or studied?
So it is quite interesting. It feels a little bit like a full circle moment to me because when I first moved here, literally 2 months after I touched Korean soil, there was a massive protest against a president at that time who eventually did get impeached and was put into prison. And that was my very first taste of what the Korean protest culture was like. And I was quite impressed at how peaceful it was. And we got to see it on display again very recently. So to me, the one thing I can say is that there definitely seems to be an air of consistency when it comes to, the people in Korea upholding, the principles of democracy and asserting their right to be able to voice their opinions.
I see. Well, thank you for sharing your opinion. Now, we've earlier talked about the pro-democracy demonstrations in Korea. Now, how would you compare the protest culture in your country to what we've seen in Korea?
The protest culture in Switzerland is, as of recently, it's a little bit more subdued. Interestingly, literally, I think it was 2 weeks ago to the day, there was a report condemning Switzerland from Amnesty International. And that is because the individual cantons in our country have now decided to clamp down a little bit on protest culture, and that now, in order to protest, you need to have prior authorization. And also, when you do protest, the authorities reserve the right to be able to pass down the cost of the protest onto the protesters themselves. And some people view that as a move against the right to protest.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you so much for joining us today. One last question for you. In your opinion, what role do young people play in protecting and advancing democracy today?
Well, I mean, they are our future. They are also our present. So they certainly play a very vital role in shaping what's to come in the few years that we have ahead of us. And so I think they play a very, very important role. Probably the most important thing they can do is, sit at a table and come to an agreement on what they expect. And yeah.
All right, and you're part of making that change too, Matthew. Always thank you for your great answers and hope you have a great weekend.
All right, thanks. You too.
Thank you.
I mean, after talking with Matthew and after a discussion today, I kind of felt that today's topic is especially relevant to our generation because when we look back during the 20th century, for example, the Gwangju democratization movement, and we had a series of protests where people were really fighting for democracy, it was mostly college students and young people who have now become our parents' generation who really actively went out to the streets and became really vocal about making this change.
It's very brave.
Yeah, very brave. So as a generation, us that will shape Korea's future in the decades to come, ending off our discussion today, what do you think we can do to strengthen democratic values and prevent backsliding?
Well, in Korea and globally, personally, I think the most important thing that we can do and should do is vote.
Right.
Now, as everybody knows, voting system is the cornerstone of democracy, and showing up to vote is the most basic yet powerful way to exercise your right as a citizen and protect democracy at the same time. Now, just to add like a personal opinion or a tip, at least in Korea, even if you don't support any parties or candidates, go submit an invalid vote, like check like a blank white spot or something. If it might not make sense at the beginning, but let me explain it very concisely. So when you don't vote at all, it shows that you just do not care about democracy or the politics. Thus, politicians will not take any actions for it. However, if you do submit an invalid vote that counts towards the statistics, it shows that I am an active voter who is willing to vote, However, no one is appealing to me at the moment. Now, this will make the politicians, and it will send the message to the politicians to search the non-voters' needs and make policies and programs that can be appealing to that group. So please do vote, even if you don't support anyone. It shows great power. Now, with the next presidential election just around the corner, we shouldn't treat it like just another day off, staying at home, especially for the MZ generations. Voter turnout rate is always lower compared to older generations. So it's a little bit, I'm a little bit worried about it because, you know, for MZ generations, we're young, we're in the 20s and 30s. We're the ones who have all the life left to live for 50 and 60 years. Let's actually participate to make the world that we will live in the future. Now, this time, let's not forget, 2025, June 3rd is the date. Again, 2025, June 3rd. Let's count and make it actually matter.
2025, June 3rd. And I think that you made such an important point because a lot of people often question even how much of an importance will my vote make, or how much big of a difference can my vote make because it's just one vote. But if all those votes they come together, they can indeed make a big difference.
Yes.
So once again, please vote. What about you, Brooke?
Yeah, just to expand upon that, I think it is very easy to get in your head and think, oh, well, I'm just one person. What can I really do on my own? But the thing is, you're not on your own. You're not alone. You will find people, like-minded people that have your same beliefs and morals. And there's a sense of unity in fighting for something, fighting for a cause together. So it's not just one vote. You are going to be uniting with several people and voting together. So get involved, speak up about things that are important to you. And I think it's also easy sometimes if you're maybe non-confrontational, if politics are intimidating to you, to think, oh, I'm just not into politics. But I encourage you to do some research.
Because it affects your lives.
It does. And it doesn't always have to be, like we've seen today, it doesn't always have to be this very confrontational, volatile thing. You can peacefully protest for what you believe in. So definitely dig into it, and you might be surprised to discover that there are things that you are unexpectedly really passionate about, and you might find fellow friends that are also passionate about the same things. So I would say that's the most important thing. Get out there and vote, and just get involved, get in the know, make sure that you are getting more knowledgeable about what's going on, because like we've been saying, as young people, we are driving the car towards the future, so you can't put the blindfold on. You have to be aware of what's going on, and that's the only way that we can create change and create a just and equitable society.
And I think it's very important for us to remember that the democracy that we're enjoying today, it was really hardly fought and hardly earned by the previous generation. So we should really cherish it and value it so that we can continue these values even more. And Brooke just mentioned how it's always good to study and research if you're going to take part in an election. So one last reminder, Arirang TV is once again broadcasting the televised debate of the presidential candidates starting this Sunday. So be sure to tune into that as well. And that's all we have for today and this week of News Generation, but we will be back next Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Iwon Bit.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And Brooke Prince.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you, you too. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us throughout this week, and hope to see you next week as well. We are
News Generation.